We're so excited to have you here and to learn more about how this all came to be. So let's just start at the beginning and talk a little bit about entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Where did your passion for entrepreneurship come from?
I guess one of the stories that I love to tell is when I was a senior in high school, I was working for a company that, it's obviously a loaded story how I got to work there, but the company I was working for was sold to Hewlett-Packard. And at that time, pretty much I think everybody in the company got to hold this check in their hand, made out to David Bailey from Hewlett-Packard for $27 million. So here I am, a senior in high school, barely 18 years old, and I'm looking at this check saying, okay, how do I get my name on this check? I don't want to take Dave's away from it, but how do I do this? And so I've always been interested in it. And, you know, like most everybody else, I ended up working for somebody else for a long time. But when this opportunity came up, it's like, okay, it's time.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people, when they kind of have interest in entrepreneurship, maybe try a couple of different things before they find the one that they run with. Was Adaptive Workshops your first taste at entrepreneurship, or was there anything that led up to that?
No, when I left Ships, I came back and was looking for a job and ended up calling one of my friends, and he basically said, come work for me, but not just work for me, but I'm going to teach you how to build your own company to do it. So I ended up building my own company with his help, and then was kind of playing both sides of the fence with him. And he ended up buying me out, and I ended up being his engineer for many, many years. And then he eventually exited his company by selling it and worked as an engineer for another company, and then that company got bought. So I went from being the engineer to one of 2 engineers to one of 6 engineers. And you can imagine, typical merger and acquisition, I didn't survive the end one. And so he called me and says, okay, what are you going to do? Because he knew it was coming. What are you going to do? Are you going to go find a job, or are you going to start your company again? I'll support you either way. What do you want to do? And so I restarted the company. That's when I started Prime Tech.
That's awesome.
Been doing that for 5 years now almost.
Very cool. So how did Adaptive Workshops come to be?
Oh, that's a loaded question. That one, I was actually helping somebody who needed technical support with his computers, and ended up looking at the VR and seeing how powerful it was as a mechanism to create change in behavior, and just got deeper and deeper into it. And he and I started the company. I ended up buying him out last year. But it's so powerful what you can do with the VR, and I just became absolutely enthralled with it. Spent a lot of time studying and figuring out why it works so well. And I think I figured that out, and that's part of our sales pitch. But we'll let you guys play here in a little bit and see if you can do it for yourselves.
I'm curious, how many of you have ever put on a VR headset before in your life? Okay, quite a few. That's awesome. So tell us more about the power of VR. What really drew you to using that mechanism?
Well, in the way we're using it for what we're doing for the company for Adaptive Workshops, it'd be something very similar to like asking you, okay, do you like to swim?
If I don't drown, yes.
If you don't drown, are you a good swimmer?
Well, meaning if it's not the ocean, yes.
Okay, the ocean's just a pool.
A very big one.
Yes.
Yes, I like to swim. I'll make it easy.
Okay, how did you learn to swim? Did you come to a classroom and have a professor teach you, say, okay, well, you're going to stick your face in the water, you're going to take your arms and you're going to flap them like this, and you're going to take your feet and you're going to kick them, and okay, good, you know how to swim now. Is that how you learn to swim?
No, you have to get in the pool and experience what it feels like to not swim and go underwater, and then you kind of learn how to do it as you go, I guess. That's
exactly what it is. And so we've taken that same concept, because I don't know if you did, this was not in the bio, but I taught swimming and lifeguarding, and I'm a scuba instructor. I've been teaching for decades. You don't learn from, and we don't want to. We typically don't want to learn by somebody is telling us, you must do this. That's not the way we learn. We learn by doing, and that passion, from my perspective, is why it works. So the same way I would teach you to swim, we've got to throw you in the pool, and my definition of a pool is the South Pacific or the Caribbean. I don't do cold water. So the pool, we got to throw you in to teach you to swim. So we're using the VR in the same manner where we're going to talk about things like communicating. In your corporate team, communication is key. If you want to really get into being a high-performing team, you've got to communicate with one another. Well, rather than me coming in and say, okay, you got to talk to your team, I'm going to throw you in this VR experience, which you would naturally want to do well in, and you did this earlier. You can't do well unless you're communicating. So we're using that VR as a tool to really get the teams to communicate, really start coming together, understanding who's good at what, to develop those roles, and continue on from there with the workshop.
That's really cool. I think that applies to a lot of things as well, even like a musical instrument and things. You know, you need to try it yourself, get thrown in there, and learn how to do it as you go. So why not in a business setting with communication techniques as well?
People want to learn by doing,
exactly,
not by being told what to do.
Exactly. That's great. So can you talk to us more about how those communication and roles within the VR can translate into team dynamics in the workplace?
Okay, so this is one of the stories that Bree and I had actually talked about telling. So we did a workshop almost 3 years ago. Actually, when we started that one, it was probably a little over 3 years ago, that this particular girl came into the group, was introducing herself, said, my name is, and she'd take a step back. I'm the new girl, and she'd take a step back. I'm in marketing, and she'd take a step back. She had no idea she was walking backwards. We put her in the VR with the rest of her team, and at the end of the round, she was the one that was hiding in the back, which you understand that now. She was hiding in the back, and she says, okay, we're talking about roles. I can't hit the long shot. Okay, so don't. So we put her down in the front in number 2, and she did very well. Several months later, we were actually here at RevRoad, and we did the Christmas party here almost 3 years ago. At that point, we had the VR set up exactly where it is now. We put it all in. She jumped in and immediately took on a leadership role. She started teaching the other 3 people in her group what they were supposed to do, what the goals were, how to do it, and she did all that without being asked or prompted. So from an HR perspective, is that the kind of person you want on your team, who will immediately jump in and take on that role, as opposed to somebody who's going to go hide in the back? Who do you want on your team?
The person that's at the front that jumps in.
And she did. She didn't even realize that. We pointed that out to her afterwards. She's just like, oh, I did that.
That's really cool. Those numbers that he's referring to will make more sense once you all get a chance to jump in the VR game and see what he's talking about. But that's a really cool story. So when you talk about employees engaging with each other within the VR workshop and in the work setting, you're talking about showing up for work and completing tasks and all that kind of engagement. So what does employee engagement mean to you, and why is it important to improve that?
I've actually done quite a lot of research on this particular subject, and there's mountains and mountains of research available for you to read. But basically what this research says is that only about 1/3 of the employees in the United States are actively engaged in their office, meaning that they will come in, if something happens, they will take care of it, as well as doing what they would normally be hired to do. 50%, it's actually 51%, of employees are what is determined as disengaged, meaning they're simply there to exchange time for a paycheck. They're not bad people, but they come to work, they show up on time, they go to lunch on time, they go home on time, they do what they're supposed to do, and they go home. If something happens, that's not my problem. That's not my job. They're disengaged. The remaining small percentage are actively disengaged. They're basically looking for the door. So what we're trying to do is flip that 1/3 in half. If we can get half of your employees to be actively engaged, where something comes up like COVID, how do we get around that? And then knock that disengaged down to about 1/3. The ones who are actively looking for a job, they're going to find a new job eventually. So we don't focus on them. We're just trying to get that small group to go from being a 9 to 5er to a 9 to 8 to 5:05. That 5 minutes is huge. We're just trying to get them to open up and ask for help and say, okay, you know what, I don't understand this. Give me some help with this. And having somebody else on the team saying, okay, yeah, let me help with that. Take 5 minutes.
It sounds like you're working to build leadership within individuals, no matter what their role is in the company, that they can still be a leader. So talk to us about that. Why is it important to build leadership within individual companies, and how does adaptive workshops help accomplish that?
Well, the leadership roles are obviously always going to be a leadership role. You're going to have people who are in charge. Even if it's your own person working remotely. I mean, we talked a little bit about this a second ago, where you have people that are in the office or at a store versus remote people who are at their home office working remotely or coming in online to do stuff. Whether that person is by themselves or in a group, somebody has to take that leadership role. So even if they're by themselves, and especially these days when so many people work from home, they have to have that self-leadership just to get through the day. Otherwise, things just don't get done as well. That, from a perspective of a business owner, that's the difference between success and failure. If those businesses will have teams or can get teams to be actively engaged, even just a little bit more, those teams are enormously more successful. And there's actually, I have a lot of quotes on the website about different things. So one of them is a research that IBM did, that highly engaged teams have a nearly 3x return on assets. So when you're talking about paying rent, 3 times the return on assets and nearly double the return on sales. So your sales efforts that we were just talking about with Jason, those efforts are hugely rewarded if you have an actively engaged team. And that's huge on the bottom line of your business.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how does adaptive workshops help translate that into the workplace, the leadership?
Playing video games. When you really get down to it,
we all really wanted, playing more video games, huh?
When you really get down to it, that's what we're doing. We're playing video games, but we're using the game as a tool. We're using it in a very unique and special way that is not really tapped into yet. It's coming. We're using it as our pool. We're going to talk about those concepts, and then we're going to have you immediately go do it. We talked about setting goals yesterday, and you set a goal to get to level 15, which you achieved. But how did you do it? What did you really do to get to that goal?
Yeah, so yesterday when a group of us did this workshop, we went in there not really knowing what to expect. We just kind of went for it, started shooting our bow and arrows at some ogres and things like that, and didn't make it very far. But as he's saying, we later strategized and set a goal to get to level 15. And the reason we were able to accomplish it the second time is because we had more of a strategy. People learned who was better at shooting the dragons in the sky versus who was better at shooting the ogres on the ground, who preferred the vantage point being closer versus being the last man. And so we were able to put people in the places that where their skill sets were and have more of a strategy to it.
And that's exactly what you want in business, isn't it?
It is. I see it works. There's my testimonial.
The whole point of having employees, the whole point of having a team in business is so that you don't have to do it alone. We are social creatures. We want to be with our friends. We want to do things with our friends. We want to be in an office space where we have a great company culture. And I've been to many events like this where those companies talk about having great company culture. Well, how do you do that? What do you actually do to build that culture? That's what we're trying to do with the VR. We're trying to have something fun where the teams can come together, they can let their hair down, so to speak, play some games, but we can do it with a little bit of structure to where those people then are bonded in war, so to speak.
Or literally.
Literally.
Game.
Well, you put the heads on and you believe you're there.
It's true.
So we're bonding you in the foxholes or towers so that the next time you're together, when you come to the office the next day, you're ready to work. So we did a workshop probably 2 years ago. These guys were a bunch of metal workers. I mean, they use great big plasma torches to cut steel and just all kinds of fun stuff with that. We did that workshop on like a Tuesday. The very next day, they had a staff meeting in their office. Every one of those guys who came to that office came with their papers ready to work. They'd set a goal in the VR. They'd also set a goal for their company that they wanted to cut X number of dollars from their operating budget. Every one of those guys came to that meeting, to their staff meeting the next day, ready to figure out how they were going to achieve that goal. How were they going to cut the budget? They showed up ready to work. And these guys were not the CFO. They were the guys they were the boots on the ground. They were the guys in doing the work day to day.
Wow. That's really cool. And so is this the type of workshop that any industry, any company could benefit from? Or are there any specific, work teams, specific industries that you think it really, really benefits most?
The teams that I think would do best and companies that would do best are those who are changing quite rapidly. So you talked yesterday in your first round, you didn't know what the rules were, you didn't know what the objectives were, you had no clue about how to strategize about anything, you were just trying to survive. When you look at that from the perspective of a new hire that's in your team, you've got this well-oiled machine that's been working for years, and suddenly you've got this new body in there. Where do they fit? It often takes companies months or even years to fully integrate that new employee into that team. Mm-hmm. By doing our workshop, we can do it in half a day. We can build that camaraderie very quickly because we're talking about exactly what they need to do to become part of that team. It becomes very quickly. So companies who are changing quickly, growing quickly, that kind of thing, that's where we're really going to shine.
Okay, so you alluded earlier to kind of your sales pitch. So if somebody in this room has a company or they're interested in trying this out with their own team, what would your sales pitch sound like to them?
Oh dear. There's 3 different things that we do, so it kind of depend on which direction they wanted to go with it. The workshops are our bread and butter. That's where we want to focus. That's where we really want to shine. That's where we really can make an impact on team development. But we also do things like this, where it's, just come, bring your team of 4, let's just go play for a few minutes. We'll network, we'll talk, we'll give you the highlights. So it depends on which way they want to go. But for me to sell the workshops, it's that team development. It would be something along the lines of, okay, if you really want your team to gel, if you really want these guys to be best friends and be excited to come into work on Monday morning and really just jump in and start solving whatever it is that your company does to solve what it is they do in the world to make it a better place, how are you going to get that team to really gel? Come and do our workshops. We'll get your team lit off the launch pad quickly and get them to go from forming to performing in a matter of hours.
Very cool. So what challenges have you faced as the founder of Adaptive Workshops and an entrepreneur in this space?
Well, as I said, this company is officially not even quite 3 years old yet. So if you can do your math with the pandemic, yeah, we started a live events company right before COVID. Yeah, perfect timing. That worked out really well. But we're pretty much past that now. It is in the rearview mirror, and we are just pressing forward. It's time to stomp on the skinny pedal is one of our phrases we like. And so, yeah, COVID was a challenge, but it has also worked out into our favor because there is also a ton of research now of what has happened in the past 2 years and how that has very detrimentally affected so many corporations. There was a research article I read the other day that essentially said almost 80% of the workforce in the United States is ready to go back to the office. They're done working from home. They're done working in isolation. They want to be back and have a social presence in their office. They want to work with their friends. We help facilitate that. We help build those relationships. We give them a mechanism and a forum to go have fun and play with each other, build those relationships so that when it comes time to work, they're ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work.
Yeah, the communication in the game is probably a little better translated to teams that work in person. How does it work with people that maybe do have remote teams? Does it still translate well?
It does still translate well, because this particular VR, you don't have to be in the same room to communicate, because it's over the internet, so we can send you wherever you want in the world, literally. But I also believe that's why working remotely at the beginning of COVID worked, is because those companies and those teams had that relationship to begin with. They were able to go home and work by themselves because that relationship already existed. 2 years later, people have come and gone. Those teams, there's probably very few teams at this point that are still intact 2 years later. I mean, the world kept spinning. Right. And so can they do it on their own? Yes. But that communication, to have that relationship, is why it works. If you're unwilling to say, I need help, or you're unwilling to say, what can I do for you, then it's all just left behind. And that's part of what we're trying to do with this, is get people to be willing to say, you know what, I don't understand that. And they say, okay, let me help you with that.
Very cool. So I'm going to shift topics a little bit back towards entrepreneurship itself, and kind of, learn more about your story and get some of your advice to share with other entrepreneurs. So talk to me a little bit about some of the lessons you've learned along the way of entrepreneurship. And then from those lessons, what advice or what tips you would share with other people who are trying to build their own businesses.
I'll do those in reverse order.
Okay.
The best advice I would give for anybody that's starting a business, number one, figure out exactly what it is that you want to do, but don't be afraid to change it. And when life happens, don't quit.
COVID happens.
COVID happened. Don't quit. There were a number of times that my wife and I would sit at the table, sit on the couch, lie in bed, wherever we were talking. Okay, at what point do we give up? Especially early on with COVID. It's like a live event company, the world is shut down. What are we going to do? Do we quit? Do I go get a job? Do we do this? Does she go get a job? What do we do? And there were a number of times that we very nearly did quit and say, you know what? You know how to run a computer. Everybody needs somebody who knows how to run a computer. Just go get a job. You'll be okay. But in talking with her and my parents and other friends and forums such as this, the message was repeated over and over. Don't quit. If you need to shift, you shift. And we did. We tried some other stuff during COVID. We tried to do broadcast stuff with it and it didn't really fly, but we came back to this. What were some of your other questions on that?
Just some
that was
lessons
my advice.
you learned along the way.
The lessons.
Yeah, that ties in very nicely.
Oh, what I've learned with all this is we don't have enough time for that. The things that I've learned. So what I would say then in place of that would be surround yourself with the experts. So I have a number of people who are my advisors, and they help me a lot. They give me the feedback. They give me ideas. They help me when I'm stumped. So if you're starting a business, surround yourself with people who are better than you, smarter than you, pay them more than you pay yourself. Really find those good people. It might have actually been one of the ones here is like, okay, where do you hire your people from? Do you hire them from the unemployment line, or are you a poacher? I'm proud to say I'm a poacher. I know who I want. I've just got to get to the point where I can afford to say, all right, you are coming with me. Well, why? Because I'm going to treat you better. I'm going to pay you more. Come with me because I want you. So surround yourself with highly capable people who really know what they're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of entrepreneurship is mentorship and having that community of people to build you up.
Apparently I forgot to turn my phone off.
Oh, is it your phone? It's okay. Hopefully it's no one important.
I meant to put that on stun, but thanks, Gimple.
It's all good. So we'll kind of get into our last couple of questions here before we open up for some audience questions. But tell us, who are some of those major players that have helped you get along the way, whether it was someone you worked with that either hired you or a mentor? Just who are some major players in building up adaptive workshops to what it is today?
Well, 1, 2, and 3 are going to be my wife, my mom, and my dad. They have been instrumental in everything that I've done for years now. But some other people, I had a friend in high school that was an entrepreneur type of person, and he's the one I actually ended up working for, and he's the one that called me. We were selling car stereos out of catalogs in the parking lot of the high school when we were in high school. He has started several companies, and I've worked for him a couple of times. But he has been one that really helped me continue that entrepreneurial bug to say, okay, you know what, I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to do it myself. I want to be able to have the freedom to do what I want to do. Those are really the ones who have been instrumental in teaching me. And then again, I've gone to so many different events and listened to so many different speakers and tried to take a lot of their advice. I mean, like I say, the advice of hire people that are smarter than you and pay them more. I got that from a guy that I met years and years ago that was speaking, and I don't remember his name, but I remember that. Hire smart people and pay them well, and just turn them loose.
Turn them loose to do good work. I think we've heard that on this stage a few times.
A few times.
It's a common theme. I love it. So when times got hard with COVID or any other challenges that you faced with your business, where did you turn to for inspiration? Maybe besides the mentors, we've talked about that, but where did you turn to for inspiration?
Well, I can give you the Sunday school answer, which everybody here knows. So we'll start with that one. Almost always was my wife. Always. I mean, she is, I said I bought my partner out last year. She is technically my new partner from the perspective of the IRS. So we talk constantly about what's going on and strategize how to achieve the next goal that we're trying to do. And it's a work in progress. I know part of me felt a little bit odd coming up here because I'm not this 15, 20-year-old company that's making millions of dollars. We're still very early on in our journey here. And so a lot of it still is a work in progress. But we're very excited about where we're going. We're very excited about what we can do. The people that we've talked to get so excited to do what we're doing. And, you know, I've got people that I know that I'm just like, okay, I'm just turn them loose. They can go sell for me because they've had so much fun that I don't even need to open my mouth at this point. They're off doing the social selling that we were talking about a minute ago. They're telling their friends about it, and just let them go talk.
That's great. I'm going to go a little off script here and ask a different question. When you were talking about your wife and how supportive she is, and as we were doing the workshop yesterday, Brent told us that his kids are insanely good at this workshop. They get to level, 260 or something?
They haven't got that high. So in our basement, we play this game at home with the kids. The best we've done is level 65.
Still good.
It's still very good. Well, you figure in the game, it's about 1 minute per level. So you're going at it and your shoulders are burning. So you're talking about an hour of shooting arrows. These kids are absolutely amazing, and they're not that big. I mean, Zach's 10, Natalie's 9, Nathan is 7, and Ben will be 6 in a couple of days. So my 5-year-old can do this game.
Very good archers.
They're all very good, especially Zach. He's my sniper. He just one shot and you're down.
So I'm curious how you've seen adaptive workshops as your kids have played it, as you and your wife have worked together to build this business. How has this affected your family dynamics in building a team within your family?
Oh, they love it, and it has. It's very interesting with this game in particular. They will not play by themselves. They don't want to. They will only play if at least 3 people are playing, preferably all 4 headsets are up. It's not the game. It's the social connection. When they understand that, and these kids have learned that partly because we've told them that's why it is. They don't want to play. They don't want to play alone. We don't want to work alone. We don't want to be alone. We want to be social. We want to be around other people. That's why social media is huge, is because people want to talk to each other. They want to have those relationships. And that's what we're trying to do. And in the game, in order to get to those higher levels, you must communicate. You have to have, when we do it, we're constantly talking about, okay, you you need to get over here. They're coming over here. They're up on the high cave. They're coming in there. Courtyard. That we have our own little sayings about what's going on when we're overwhelmed. And it's, okay, everybody just drop what you're doing and come to the courtyard. And so it has changed the dynamic a little bit in our house, just because they do want to play together. But our kids are so close together in age anyway. They do a pretty good job of being good with each other. I mean, they're still kids and they still bicker, but
of course,
they're mostly good.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll just ask one more question before we open it up for audience questions. And this is just kind of about back to principles of business and entrepreneurship and things like that. What are some guiding principles that help you make decisions in your business?
Oh, I think some of those come down to some of our goals within our company and some of our operating principles. One of those would be do what's right for the client, no matter what. If it means that I have to change something, or if it means I have to take less money, or I have to do something that I really don't want to do, if it's going to be in the benefit of them, I will do what is right for the client. Honesty in our business dealings. I've seen other companies that do something similar to this that don't use commercial licensing. I pay for my commercial licensing. I will do what is above board and honest. And so the honesty, the integrity, those are some of the guiding principles that we follow within our own company, that we want to do what is right, to do it honestly, to do it above board, to do what's right for the others. I think that kind of is always in the back of our mind for whatever decision that we're doing. Okay, how do we do this correctly? How do we do it so that it's above board?
That's great. Thank you, Brent. Okay, we have a few minutes for audience questions. We'll probably take around 5 or so of them. So if there's anything that you'd like to ask Brent, feel free to put up your hand, and we'll have one of our mic runners bring you a mic. And please wait for that so that the people online can hear what you have to ask. Okay, we'll start here with Scott.
Brent, nice job. I was just curious, you've developed metrics on the impact of your workshop over the course of, in building high-performing teams and improving performance.
That is something that we are looking at to build. We met some people a couple of years ago that, or like I say, right now we're using a commercial game off the shelf. I want my own. And in that, I want to be able to do things like measuring the amount of communication going on through the headsets, the volume, the timbre of those communications. But I can't do that currently with the system that I have, although I would really love to have that. In time, we will have that. Other things that we've done questionnaires and things like that, pre-workshop and post-workshop questionnaires. And what we've discovered from doing that is that when people fill out it from the first time, they believe that they're better than they really are. So when they've gone through the workshop, and one of the questions is, okay, do you consider yourself to be really good at communicating in your team? And on a scale of 1 to 10, what would that be? Following the workshop, nearly every one of them have said, well, you know what? We said we were really good at this. What we discovered is that we're not. So can we change our first answer and then correct this one and put them both down where they really are? So that's one of them. So we're trying to build the metrics. Yes, we're not there yet, but it is on the roadmap.
Excellent.
Thank you. We'll go here to AJ.
Brent, great job.
Thanks.
Love VR. How do you plan on, first of all, it's kind of a two-part question. How big do you see your company growing, and then how do you plan to scale to get there?
Number-wise, I would love to have multiple sets in every NFL city in the country, and then start working overseas. To get there, it has to be scalable. So the first thing that I've got to do is I've got to build a team that can support the training of what I call my workshop directors. So the ones who are actually going to go do the workshops or go to a trade show and set this up or go do a networking event. It's a matter of getting started, getting a little bit of money in the door, and then just scaling the number of headsets that we have to where we can support more and more. And then when we get to the point it says, okay, you know what, we've got people who don't want to come to Utah to do it, and while we have the equipment and the availability to go, that travel time, especially the price of gas now, maybe we get to that point where we don't want to go on a road trip. So maybe it's time to go look at, okay, let's go to Phoenix. Let's open a new place in Phoenix and figure out what it takes to do that. So yeah, we would very much like to scale this. Like I said, I'd love to have offices in every NFL city in the country.
It's exciting.
I'm Brent's mom. And one thing he didn't mention here, which has stuck in my mind all along since he started this, is that perhaps you have 4 people that are going to play this game. One is the CEO of the company, 3 others have been there for years, and then you've got a new hire that this is her first week. And so when you get playing the game, she's back in the corner being very quiet, but you can't win without her help. And so this game kind of levels the playing field between the CEO and the brand new hire. And if you want to comment on that a little more, Brent.
It's true, and we use this particular game for a number of reasons. One of which is that you cannot tell who is who in the game. All you have is a breastplate, a helmet, your gauntlets with a bow and an arrow. There's no face to identify who's who. Therefore, you are forced to open your mouth and start asking. And because you can't tell who's who, it does level the playing field, so to speak, that this brand new hire versus 20-year veteran doesn't really matter anymore. They're both on the same team. They both have the same objective. They both have the same goal at the same time playing together. And that, in doing it in the VR realm, helps build that relationship. And so that's one of the reasons we use this particular game is because it does level that playing field and does bring who would normally have been opposite ends of the spectrum together.
So I should note I've done these adaptive workshops a couple times, and I think you guys did this yesterday, it sounds like, but they're powerful. And when we heard about the first business and how these tax credits, you're kind of stumbling across that it's too good to be true. I think there's a little bit of that with this, because by the time a group comes through this workshop, the team building and the increasing that is kind of almost too good to be true. I don't know how to describe it, but when you do it, you're like, wow, how are you going to move forward and try and tackle that from a sales perspective and say, no, it's not too good to be true? How are you going to do that without throwing them in the pool, so to speak?
We're throwing them in the pool. We've had a lot of discussions about this. We've really, I don't want to say struggled, but it's been very challenging to try to sell this kind of a concept to somebody without them seeing what it really is and without having that experience of putting on a headset and really trying it out. And so it has been challenging to try to sell this sight unseen. So one of the strategic pieces that we're doing these days is doing events like this and doing demos where we can bring a number of people in, doing a networking event or some other event, and actually get people in the headsets so that they can experience it. One of the things that we're actually building, and my tax guy advised me, says just keep it within the same company. You don't need to start a third one for that. That we are basically going to do our own expo event next year. That we had such a great success with Tech Summit, and there's been several others that we have talked to, but they're also very expensive to go and participate on their terms versus coming in and just doing it ourselves. I mean, you can see how much space we take. So to do this at an expo floor, that gets to be a very expensive proposition. And I've had several conversations. I had one that was last April that before I was talking to him, he actually erased a whole corner of his floor for us to come. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that because he wanted $73,000 for it. And I'm like, we're going to have to pass on that unless we get a sponsor. But we're building our own to do exactly that, to get people in the headsets, to give them an opportunity to come experience. And that's why we brought the VR in today, was the people that are here today, you're all welcome to come and give it a try. And so many of you have played VR. It'll be a little easier for you, but we're throwing them into the pool. We're going to put the headset on and let you try it.
Thanks. We'll do one more question, if there is one. Right here. Thanks.
First of all, I want to say I'm incredibly excited to try this out after we're done, and I'm grateful that I wore my stretchier pants today. But I do want to know, from idea to prototype, what was that journey like? Because I can't even imagine having an idea and then turning it into a reality where you have a game.
Definitely a work in progress. We will continue to use this until we can afford to do our own, and the people that I've talked to that are hopefully going to be the ones that'll do it, those people are amazing. So from the journey of, okay, how do we come up with the idea to do this was originally kind of my original partners was looking at it from a perspective of behavioral change. They were working with some troubled youth and was using the VR as a tool to get them to be better people. And when I'm sitting there talking to these guys and say, okay, we can take this to business because they're the ones who have the budget for this. They're the ones that are wanting to do this. I mean, team building events is nothing new. Companies have been doing this for decades. That's a great place to go play with this. We can either do just fun networking event. We can really get in and do the workshops and really get into the cerebral side of it and have them do things. The VR is the secret sauce as to why it works. So again, throwing you in the pool versus just saying, okay, you need to talk to your team. You need to strategize better. When you set your goals, you have to build a plan to do it. Rather than go and sit through a lecture series of telling you to do that, which we do, we're going to tell you those things in the workshop, but then we immediately have a mechanism and an environment to throw you in to make you do it right then and there. What that accomplishes is that you don't forget and you've done it. So the retention from a memory perspective, you're not going to forget it. You're going to have to do is you come to work in the next day, you're ready to get to work. But because you've done it, you've overcome that boundary of fear to say, well, you know what, I don't know this person. And so I'm kind of shy and I'm just going to hide in the back and just go do my job. Whereas now that we force you to talk to somebody, when you come into the office, you say, oh, hi, Brittany, how are you doing today? You having a good day? You've had that relationship, and so it's more likely that you're going to do it again. And that's why we use the VR. And so it was an interesting process for me to come to that realization. It took a lot of study and a bit of luck, actually.
Thank you. Brent, are there any last nuggets of wisdom or success stories with the workshop or anything else that you're itching to share with us today?
That's usually not the last question. I've been to these. I know what the last question is.
It's coming up.
It's coming up. Okay.
Don't worry. You'll still get that one.
I don't get to skip ahead. I think a lot of it comes back to don't quit. Go back to that strategy. Life in general is a work in progress. It's never really over until you're dead, and even then, it's not really over. So if you have to adjust, if you have to make changes, that's okay. Just keep going. Figure out what needs to change, and make that change. I'm one of those that just refuses to quit. I don't like losing to computers, and I don't.
The true spirit of an entrepreneur, refusing to quit. I love it. Now the long-awaited for last question. What is something fun that your success has allowed you to do?
And see, that I already know what the answer to that one is. And again, because this company's still new, we haven't done it yet, but it's what I want to do. So I spent a couple of years on cruise ships. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to take the kids, and my wife and I want to take the kids on a world cruise. I want to take them around the world.
Not just through the VR headset.
Not just through the VR headsets. I want to take them in the real world on a real ship across the ponds and actually do that in-person learning. I mean, again, we can use the VR for a tool in what we're trying to do, but there is also no substitute for the real world. So when we teach these kids, where you guys live and the way that you live, you have no idea how easy you have it. I mean, one of the places that I lived was Haiti. You don't know poverty till you've been to the bottom of the third world countries like Haiti. So I want to take them to that and have them understand just how good they have it here, and that these people who have nothing can still be happy. And they are. I have friends that are Haitians that these kids were just, they didn't care that they had nothing. They slept on the dirt. They had tin roof maybe that leaked, but they were still happy. And so I think maybe that would be the last thing I would say is be happy with what you have. Be grateful for what you have, especially in this state. We really do have it great here. We really, really do. And so be grateful for it and be happy that you have it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Brent, for joining us up here on the stage and for bringing your awesome workshop setup. Again, we invite you guys to stay and enjoy lunch and try out his workshop here. So thank you again. And as a token of our appreciation, we have this gift basket here for you as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Everyone give him a round of applause. Thank you.